we're going to be discussing, getting into what has been published in our new PIN flash on child road deaths. This was published in September. 6,000 children have been killed on EU roads in the last 10 years. Half of those were killed as vehicle passengers, 1/3 as pedestrians, and 11% as cyclists. And my colleague Jenny Carson will talk more about the findings of our report in her presentations. Also be very happy to hear from our colleague Rita from Norway. Norway achieved 0 child road deaths in 2019. But firstly, first speaker, I'd like to introduce Chuck Kreuzinger from Toyota Motor Europe, Senior Manager of Safety Research and Technical Affairs. And Toyota Motor Europe is one of ETSC's partners of the PIN program. You've been with us right since the very beginning of the PIN program, and we're extremely grateful for your support. Over to you, Chuck.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone online. And thanks, Ellen, for giving me a minute to say a few words. I'm saying that especially because child safety has really been a topic very close to my heart. Since I deal with road safety, and that is now more than 25 years, it has been one of my priorities. And that's at the moment where you can consider child seats today are rather safe. There are still too many children that are traveling in cars, not restrained properly or not being placed in appropriate child seats. And unfortunately, not even in any child seat. And that means they are using the restraint system designed for adults. So you can easily imagine that this is not very safe. And as you said, above that, children who are using the road as pedestrians, cyclists, or in any other way are especially vulnerable. I mean, they are more vulnerable than adults because they are more fragile, but they are also more easily overlooked. And they did not go through the years of training as road users as adults do. So there is many things that we have to improve to catch up with that. So thank you again for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to attending this session that ETSC has organized, and I'm able to bring up myself to speed with the latest information. Thank you, and I'm enjoying.
Super, thank you. Thanks very much, Chark. Straight on to a question for you, the audience. We'd like to launch a poll. And the question is, if you have children under 12, do you feel that it's safe for them to walk or cycle to school? So here are the possible answers. Yes, we do, and we do walk and cycle to school. Yes, but we use a car or public transport. Or no, we use a car or public transport. So I'll leave you with that for a moment, and then we'll give you the results. So in the meantime, let me introduce Jenny Carson. She's our PIN program manager. So together with the colleagues here, she's working very, very hard to prepare these different PIN reports. And she's going to be presenting our brand new PIN flash. So I wonder if we have results of the poll. Yeah, okay, well, that's it's nice to see that we have some walkers and cyclists. So a bit of a mixed picture though. Okay, thank you. So that was just to get you thinking about traveling as a child, walking, cycling, and all the different options that there are, and then the different safety aspects as well. So Jenny, over to you.
Thanks, Ellen. I'll just get my slides up. So yes, thank you very much. My name is Jenny Carson. I'm the program manager for the PIN program here. at ETSC. So just a little bit about the PIN program for anybody that's joining a PIN talk for the first time. So the PIN program stands for the Road Safety Performance Index Program, and it's really about ranking the road safety performance across 32 countries. So we have all the EU member states, and then also the UK, Norway, Israel, the Republic of Serbia, and Switzerland. And we look at the road safety performance from year to year, but also over longer trends, a decade. But we also try and use good practices from each of the PIN countries to inspire as well. So we are very lucky to have an expert in each of the 32 countries that help us to provide the data, the information, the good practices. We call these the PIN panelists. Also a steering group who looks more at the scientific rigor of the project. As Ella mentioned, a project team here at ETSC. And to date, we've published 43 thematic flash reports, we call them. Across the bottom of the screen there, you can see the partners in the PIN program, and we are very grateful to them for their support. So I'm going to talk today about our most recent PIN report, which focused on child road deaths. We published this in September. And we look here at children up to the age of 14. It's perhaps an arbitrary age, but it's one that's considered the sort of cutoff point for when the mobility of children is dictated by their parents or by adults. So this is the age that we've stopped at. I should mention that there's one aspect of child road safety that is not covered fully in this report, and that is child road safety or road safety education. And that's because this is covered in great detail in our Learn project. Another project that ETSC runs and has published its own report also very recently on road safety education. So if you feel that this aspect is missing, then that is why, and please look at our Learn report for that information. So first, I'm going to look at the data that we found and that we show in our PIN in the report. So here we can see the reduction in the road mortality of children, and we can see that it has reduced, and it has reduced more quickly than for the rest of the population. Nevertheless, 6,000 children, as Ellen said, have been killed on EU roads in the last 10 years. 390 were killed in 2020 alone. And also, it's important to bear in mind that these graphs, this figure does not always show the complete picture, because we don't have the modal split. We don't know how these children are traveling, and it could be that they are walking and cycling less. Here we show the progress in reducing what has changed in child road deaths in each of the PIN countries, and we can see that across the EU 27, on average, they have reduced by 5% each year over that 2011 to 2020 period, and they have reduced on the whole in the majority of the PIN countries. When we look at road user groups, Ellen already mentioned these proportions. So half of the children killed were vehicle passengers, a third pedestrians, and 11% were killed as cyclists. So here, these proportions are for children aged 0 to 13. Just for this road user group aspect, we went slightly beyond that age group, and we looked also at children 14 to 17, because this is when they start riding power two-wheelers. And we can see then that when we look at the power two-wheelers that are killed aged 14 to 17, 9 out of 10 of them are boys. Here we see that modal shift a bit differently, maybe a bit more clearly. So when we look at children aged 0 to 13, the proportions in terms of road users are fairly equal between male and female, but as they are allowed to ride power two-wheelers, then those power two-wheelers start to increase, and particularly for male road users. It's important to know that although the EU recommends power two-wheelers you should be allowed to ride a power two-wheeler from the age of 16, some countries do allow it from 14. Here we look at the particular vulnerabilities of certain road users, and we can see how children are killed. And it seems that child pedestrians are a particularly vulnerable group here in collision with a car. And this represents 21% of all child road deaths. Child car occupants, again, with no other vehicle involved, is the second largest single proportion at 18%. So these are sort of the vulnerabilities of the children as they travel. Another aspect we look at in our report is the proportion of all deaths that road deaths represent. And here we can see that 1 in every 15 child deaths is as the result of a road collision. 5 years ago, this was 1 in every 13. So progress has been made. But if we look at this proportion in the rest of the population, then for children, it really remains very still high, a lot higher than for the rest of the population. And so there is still a lot of work to be done in addressing child road deaths. Serious injuries, we also collected data on serious injuries in our PIN report, and in fact 6,000 children were seriously injured on the road in 2020 for the EU 20 member states that we were able to collect the data for. So on average, over each year, the serious injuries were reduced by 4% over those 20 EU member states. But it's important when looking at this graph to know that these are the serious injuries based on the national definitions of each of those countries. So it's very difficult to make comparisons across the countries. So that's the data, that's the information, the data, the situation that we discovered in our PIN report. But what can be done to address this issue? How can we improve the situation for children traveling on our roads? So I thought I would start by looking at the EU policy that exists currently that we have. So we have the directive on child restraint systems, which makes it mandatory for children traveling in vehicles to be restrained properly. The VAT, the EU also allows for reduced VAT on child restraint systems. We have data in our report about which countries choose to do this, because not many do, but some do, and the option is there to make them more accessible, cheaper. We have important vehicle safety regulation. ISO to regulate speed came into force this year. Automatic emergency braking systems, which will come into force in 2024, are also now going to be able to detect pedestrians and cyclists. And these are important technological advances that will improve the road safety of children, as well as obviously all road users. We have the driving license directive I mentioned before about power two-wheelers and the young age at which some countries choose to allow children to ride power two-wheelers. The recommended minimum age in the directive is 16. We also have this theory test so that nobody can now ride a power two-wheeler without having passed a test first. We also more recently now have this indicator looking at child restraint use, which is something that ETSC welcomes in terms of being able to measure the situation on the ground. I mentioned those technologies. They ISA, automatic emergency braking, correctly fitting a child restraint system. These are all technologies which exist and can improve the situation for children as well as other road users. So if I look at some of the steps that can be taken in terms of protecting children inside the vehicle, the most obvious is the child restraint system. As I said, the EU legislation is there. It mandates that they must be attached correctly. And we asked our PIN panelists for some data about child restraint usage rates, and we can see here on the left that the data that we have, it seems that they are quite high. We have some quite high rates, 97, 99%. But the top two countries, there were two countries who were able to provide us with data on whether those child restraint systems were actually appropriate and correctly used. And then the figures are quite different. So it's very important with child restraint systems that we're really stopping the cars and looking and checking to see that the seat, the child restraint system is appropriate for the child, correctly fitted as well. And we also asked for data about how many of the children killed were not fastened, and we can see here that it still remains a problem, and there are still children who are killed who are not fastened with a seatbelt or a child restraint system. I've mentioned the VAT as well to make those child restraint systems more accessible to people. Other initiatives that can be taken include alcohol interlocks. So they're in France, all coaches that transport children now have to have an alcohol interlock. There are other countries in which it's not mandatory, but it happens nonetheless. So this is something that can be encouraged, and it can make drivers aware of their responsibilities, as well as ensuring that they are not drinking and driving. Child restraint systems in taxis is something else that could be important if there is an exception is made in the directive. But again, there are countries that we mentioned in our PIN report where it is mandatory nonetheless. So if we look now at the steps that can be taken outside the vehicle, one of the key things that we look at is traveling to school. Children travel to school a lot. It is one of the sort of main journeys that they take. So let's try and make these journeys as safe as possible. And some of the initiatives that we mentioned in our report, school streets, where you really dramatically reduce or even eliminate traffic from a school during a certain period. Other initiatives that we've seen is schools and local authorities that plan safe routes to schools and share these with their pupils. Separated infrastructure and speed limits. These are improve road safety for everybody, but particularly children and our most vulnerable route users. Limit speeds, in particularly around areas where there are children and a lot of cyclists and pedestrians. The bicycle helmet is one of the best forms of protection. In some countries they are mandatory. We have details of this in our report, but enforcement here is an issue. Pre-hospital care, when there is a collision or a crash, it's important to ensure that the people that are arriving at the scene as the first responders, that they are trained in dealing particularly with children, and that they have equipment for children as well. I've mentioned it before, the minimum age for obtaining a moped license, and this idea of active mobility in the context of health. We want children to walk and cycle. It's good for their health, but we must make sure that it's safe. So in our report, having seen the data and the possible countermeasures, things that you can do to improve road safety, we also include a number of recommendations aimed at national governments and also at the EU. So I think one of the first recommendations that we have for national governments is to achieve overall high levels of road safety. Roads that are safe for everybody roads that are safe for children tend to be also safe for everybody. So high levels of ambition for road safety would also improve that for children. Reduce motorized traffic around schools and areas with high numbers of children, pedestrians and cyclists. Implement separated infrastructure. We know that when cars and vulnerable road users are separated, the safety is improved. We would call on national governments to mandate alcohol interlocks on school buses or coaches that carry children. And we would call on them to reduce the VAT on child restraint systems as is possible under the directive. For the EU, we have this KPI on child restraint usage rates, but we would ask them to also adopt a separate target for reducing road deaths and serious injuries among children. We would also ask, in terms of the driving license directive, to make theoretical and practical training, as well as a practical test, mandatory for obtaining an AM license. And there's also an opportunity to revise the standards for testing bicycle helmets to ensure that they really are the safest that they can be. And I think maybe one of our biggest asks for child road safety, but also for road safety generally, is to have properly enforced 30-kilometer zones in areas with large numbers of pedestrians, cyclists, and near schools and child care facilities. Thank you very much. You can find a copy of our report on the website that you can see there, and I look forward to any questions.
Super, thank you very much, Jenny. And for those of you who have joined since the beginning, welcome to ETSC's webinar on child safety. So Jenny gave an overview of the EU-wide data and the analysis that ETSC has done, and our recommendations both to the European level and the national level. And we hope to be getting into some of those knottier issues in the second half during the panel debate. But one of the points that also came out very strongly in our report is that countries with a general good road safety record also tend to have a good child safety. And one of these countries, well, the leader is Norway. So our next presentation is from Rita Arvold. We're very happy to have you here this morning. Rita is Senior Advisor for Traffic Safety from the Norwegian Public Roads Administration Traffic Safety Department, and also project leader for campaigns on speeding and distraction, also of relevance. So over to you, Rita, if you can share your presentation. And yeah, okay, it's coming from Jenny, super. And if you could unmute yourself, lovely. Thank you. And I think, Rita, we're doing fine with the time. So please go ahead. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Jenny, for helping me through the presentation. I'll just tell you when to switch the page, okay? Yeah, hi. I've been asked to talk about how we work with child road safety, and I want to talk about some of the measures that we do, but I would also like to talk about how we work, how our approach is, and our philosophy in regards to road safety. And as you can see here, Norway has a very high level of road safety compared to other countries. And in terms of mortality rate, there were 15 road fatalities per million inhabitants, which is lower than in most EU countries. And this is the mortality rate in Norway has been the lowest in the 6 or 7 years, I think. So I have to admit that we're quite proud of this this mortality rate and the success that we think that we have had in our work the last decades. And the next, please. So you can see that the fatalities in road traffic in Norway has had an enormous development since the 1946, and it has declined continuously for several decades. And especially after 1970 and after 2001, when we introduced Vision Zero, we had even more decline in our death fatalities. In 1921, a total of 80 people were killed in reported traffic accidents, and this is historically low numbers. This year, we have unfortunately had preliminary numbers are around 100 deaths killed in traffic. But we, as all other countries, have had an enormous increase in traffic, but despite this, the mortality rates are declining. The next page, please. So here you can see that the traffic volumes have been almost tripled, but the number of people killed has been reduced by more than 80%. The next, our ambition is, of course, even more reduction, and of course, our ambition is Vision Zero, and we want it quickly. And you can see here that we want to cut road death in half by 1930, and by 1950 we aim for having no one killed in road traffic at all. So this is setting a formal target of zero death for the first time, and that goes a step beyond its existing Vision Zero strategy approach. So we want to reach zero, not only with children, but with all people. The next, please. And I think that's almost the same slide with development and our interim target for 1930. So you can skip that and go to the next one. And so let's turn to talk about the children. the number of children that dies and is severely injured in road accidents in Norway has declined over the last decade, and at a much more faster rate compared to the rest of the population. So that there are no other age groups where the decreases in accidents has been as positive as among children. And in 1969, over 100 children died in road accidents here in Norway. But for the first time in 2019, we did not record a single child road death. And in 2020, unfortunately, 2 children died. And in 2021, 3 children died. So we have not accomplished to the number 0 after 2019. But that is, of course, our goal for the future. But if you look at the next slide, you will see the development from 1966, and you can see that the decline both in children killed and severely injured is dramatically declining year by year. And today, almost no children die in road accidents. If they die, or as a car passenger. If they die, they die as pedestrians, bicyclists, or have been knocked down at a parking lot or something. So you can go to the next slide. So even though we have had very good results up until now, there's still, of course, a lot more to do before Vision Zero is realized. And the target during the next plan period for 2022 to 2025, we aim for at least 2 years without children being killed in traffic. So we, sorry. The indicated target in the action plan, the previous action plan for 2018 to 2021 was that there should be at least 1 year within the plan period with no children killed, and that target was achieved in 2019. But for the next period, we must increase that from 1 to 2 years. Yes, you can take the next. So what has actually happened in Norway? There has been enormously changes in the society, not only in regards to road safety work, but also in regards to how children are perceived and treated. They're not only treated as small adults, and we have had a general change in risk perception. The infrastructure has been changed, so we separate children and traffic more than we did before. And last but not least, what has really changed in Norway is how we work with road safety. And everything started after we introduced the Vision Zero in 2001. And it's strange how people perceived children's road accidents in earlier days. It was seen as something typical, normal, something that you could expect. It was almost as normal as accidents as accidents when skiing, for instance. So people didn't notice children's accidents as much before as they do today. And it was also a politician that in 1970 said that we would not have as many children road accidents if the mothers could just look after their children better. And that statement did something to many people. And after that, a lot of people working with road safety, especially women, were even more eager to work on child safety issues. So we had a change in many areas in the society since 1970. And the next page. So we, as I've said before, we typically give credit to our success to the establishing of the Vision Zero. And the Vision Zero, the introduction of that vision, made our work much more knowledge-based, more systematic, and more targeted and more long-term. And the positive development is also very much due to a close and good cooperation with other actors. And I think that is something that is very special with the Norwegian road safety work, the cooperation with so many different road safety actors and organizations. And without that cooperation, we would not probably have not achieved the targets and the good success that we have had in our road safety work. And what is also very important in our work is that we have very many measures, and many of these measures, they interact and change in one area, and the success of one measure will also affect other areas. So for instance, if you reduce the speed limit near school areas and housing areas, you would also have positive effect on other target groups like school children. So the amount of different types of measures is very important. And we also have a very strategic way of working, and we also have specific target goals and follow-ups. So all our measures are followed up every year. And that makes all the organizations more committed to the measures they have said that they would work on. The next, please. Yes, I think that's the same. Sorry, take the next one. And this is also just something about the purpose of the plan, which the plan, the National Plan of Action for Road Safety. That is something that we have every 4th year. And in the plan for 2025 to 2022 to 2025, that includes 179 measures. And the purpose of this plan is to not only make the measures more visible, but also make it more professional and also strengthen the cooperation between the parties working with road safety. You can take the next one. It's just showing the different parties that cooperate on the road safety work in Norway, which consists of interest organizations, state parties, ministers, county administration, and large city municipalities. And the next page is just showing all the different involved parties and organizations. And the ones in red is the ones that have included their measures and that are followed up. In the blue are just organizations that has provided input to the plan. And the two following slides are just showing the key performance indicators and targets. And the next slide is showing the 179 measures. The amount of measures differ in each plan, but what is very important is that all the measures is to have a indicator and a target goal, so that it is it will get easier to follow up and to measure the amount of success. And the next is that the key elements to make children safer is a variety of long-term measures, and you have to combine all three types of measures, like road users and risk behavior, roads and maintenance, and enforcement controls and motor vehicle. And all these three will interact. And the next measure is, if we gonna look closer at some of the measures, there has been a lot of measures in Norway to give knowledge and to change attitudes and behavior. And all the different organizations, like the Norwegian Council for Road Safety, for instance, have prepared information programs and brochures and campaigns. Different types of campaigns are typically examples of that kind of measures. And the target group are not only children, but also parents, organizations, and schools and kindergartens. And these types of measures are constantly ongoing. And what we do see is that these measures have had a very good effect to change both the knowledge about traffic behavior, but also the attitudes regarding safety and how to act in traffic. And the next. So what is a very, very important measure, and that has been important to reduce the children's road death numbers, are the Safe Thinking Society and use of seatbelt, and this not quite sure about the English word, but the seats, the special seat for the children, which was mandatory first in 1988. The seat belt was mandatory in 1970. And after that, we see a tremendous reduction in death and severely injured children. And what is important here in Norway is that this has become the norm. If you don't secure your children, especially the small ones, it's as much social pressure and social stigma in regards to not securing your children. And of course, the older children, that is a little bit more difficult to manage, to keep them using the seatbelt. But the small ones, they have we have good results in that. And in general, the Norwegian are quite good in using the seatbelts. We have research showing that 97% of all drivers and front seat passengers use the seatbelts. So it's a very safe thinking society in regards to securing both children and adults in the car. But of course, not everybody is securing their children and not necessarily the best in the best way. So we still have work to do in this area. And next one, the safe thinking society is also in regards to using helmets on children. So I don't think there's anyone who has small children in Norway that don't put a helmet on them when they go on cycling. And the next is a very important measure is in different ways to engage and involve children. And that could be either as traffic clubs, like the Norwegian Council for Road Safety has, and they have developed games and interactive programs, so to make people engage in traffic behavior issues. And taking responsibility in road safety is something that very many children like, and to use children as influencers is a very good good measure, actually, especially parents will listen to their children if asked to not drive them to school, or to secure them properly, or use their seat belts, or wear a helmet. So to influence, so it's important to use the children actively in the road safety work. And the next, other measures to promote walking and cycling and offer safe routes, not only to prevent accidents, but also in regards to health issues. But that is a measure that is getting more and more focus at the moment, because we want more and more people to walk and cycle. So many measures are getting planned in regards to this issue. And the next, which is also a very important measure in Norway, not only in regards to children, but for all Norwegians, is the use of reflectors to increase visibility and safety. It's quite dark in Norway, so these reflectors are quite important. And the next is that education in kindergartens and school is very important and being very much used. And the education programs is not only in schools, but also organizations. They offer different programs that gives knowledge, but also give the children the possibility to play and learn in a more fun way. So there has been a lot of work on different types of education issues and programs, and also in regards to learning children how to be good pedestrians, how to bicycle. So there's a lot going on in this area. And the next is something that was established a couple of years ago, the heart zone concept, which is it's a heart zone. It's a sort of a car-free, to the extent that that is possible, a car-free zone around the school. And it's not only to prevent accident, but also to promote mobility and make more children walk and cycle to school, but also to promote health. And this is also a very good example of a cooperation, because this concept started as a cooperation between Norwegian Road Society Organization, the Norwegian Council for Road Safety, the Parents Committee for Elementary Education, the Cyclist Organization, the Norwegian Police, the Health Directorate and the Norwegian Public Roads Administrations. So this is a concept that we all work together with. But it's when, and this is getting it's a very popular concept. And at the moment, we are trying to develop the concept so that more schools are managing to implement the concept in their particular school area. Because all the schools are different and the school roads are different. So they have to make their own heart zone that is more suitable in their area. And the next page is something that was started in 1970, and that is the Children's Transport Plan. The Norwegian politician wanted to give children a voice in transport planning. And this is also an example of how to involve and activate children. So this is quite popular measured. And this is actually the examples of measures that I wanted to mention. But the two next slides are just more details about the different measures that the different parties are going to work with in this plan period. So this is something that I can send Jenny, so that you have all the measures, not only for children, but also in the other areas.
Super. Thank you very much, Rita. That was a real tour de force. Okay, so we still do have a little bit of time for questions. No, but really, thank you so much. I really appreciated the bigger picture, the strategy, emphasizing on the targets, and then the specific targets and measures also for children. We absolutely love this heart zone approach. And also very interested in this transport planning. I think children already from a very young age have quite strong views and want to be listened to, and have good ideas as well, sometimes better than us adults. So I wanted to take some of the questions though from the participants. Thank you very much for sending them in. So first one to Rita, but Jenny also, perhaps you could say something for the European view as well. So from Bart Nobles from the VSV, Rita, do you know what the modal split is of children going to school in Norway? How many are walking? How many are cycling? How many are in the car? How many are in the bus? What's the trend? It's a hard question, I know, but a very important one.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but what we see is that more and more children are actually walking and cycling to school. And that is not only because of they have a more positive view on walking and cycling, but also because of the infrastructure is more much more safer for the children to do that now. But we do actually have regularly research on mobility. I'm not quite sure if that is in an English translated report, but if you want, I can look it up and see if I can send it to you.
Okay, yes, please. No, I think that would be very interesting. Thank you very much. Jenny, how about how did we address this modal split challenge in our report?
Yeah, so it's I think I mentioned it at the very beginning. So we don't actually know a lot of the time the sort of kilometers driven, kilometers cycled, walked. We don't know. We don't have that data, unfortunately. So we can't see to what extent that, you know, more children walking and cycling, fewer children walking and cycling. We can't see to what extent that impacts the figures. And so, you know, one of our asks, I suppose, would be to start collecting that data so that we can really get a better picture of has the safety of the vulnerable road users, so the children particularly walking and cycling, improved, or has the road safety, you know, of them inside the cars, and there are more of them in cars, improved. It's really important to be able to try and gather that data for children as well as all road users, really. But yeah, the more data we have, the better, the clearer picture we get. So.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Another question to you, Rita, on the heart zones. So to what extent is the heart zone concept about awareness, enforcement, and if I could add also infrastructure to support the car-free zone around schools?
But the heart zone concept is all about those issues, actually. So it's and it has to be about all those issues. But the different schools and the different parts of the countries have different possibilities in regards to what they can do. So in some areas you can do something about the infrastructure. In other areas you cannot. And that is also something that makes it somewhat difficult to implement the heart zone, because you have to be creative. You have to be creative in regards to how to use it. But what is necessarily is to use the heart zone to influence the attitudes and behavior in regards to safe behavior and to not drive their children to school, for instance. That's the first thing you have to do, because that's possible in all areas.
If you said that the infrastructure is not it's not possible to do the infrastructure, why would this be? Because of like planning restrictions, or what are the reasons for not implementing infrastructure changes at heart zones?
It might be that if you have a school in a city, and it would be difficult to change the area around the city, the school. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's quite.
May not be impossible, but more difficult than in other areas, for instance.
Okay, thank you. So I have one more question, but I think I'll save that for the panel because that will fit also very well into that discussion, also on resistance to changes and how to deal with it. So Rita will be coming back, joining for the panel. It's just gone 11, so we're going to have a break. But before that, well, if we were in person, we would give Jenny and Rita a big round of applause. Thank you very much for the two excellent presentations filled with good ideas and data and some clear recommendations on what to do to tackle this horrendous annual death toll that we have in the European Union. So thank you also to the audience who's still there. So before we have the break, which is going to be until 11:20, we've got another poll for you to think about whilst you're making your cup of tea or your cup of coffee. So I know people say, I can't choose, it's all of this. So you've got an option as well for that. If you can choose one measure to improve the road safety of children, what would it be? So introduce lower speed limits, first one. Second one on the child restraint system, so better information and campaigns to improve child restraint systems. School streets outside every school, safer walking and cycling infrastructure, i.e. separated cycle paths, or you have the get out clause of all of it. It's silly to make us choose. So there we are. Please have a think and let us know. So we'll reconvene then at 11:20. Please come back. We've got some excellent speakers from across the EU for our panel discussion, which will then go on until 12:30. Thanks again and see you very soon. Bye-bye. Okay, it's nearly time to start again. So for those of you who haven't gotten up from your computer, please just get up and have a stretch, at least turn around before we resume in a minute.
Rick, do you want to test your microphone?
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Super, thanks.
I will also share my screen, yeah?
Yep. Can you put it in? Yeah, perfect. We see your notes, but it doesn't matter.
I'm not so important.
Okay, so welcome back to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning for the ETSC PIN webinar on child safety. So before we go to our next speaker, I wanted to see if we could have the outcome of this million-dollar question. Which one measure would you take if you could to improve the road safety of children? So yeah, very strong support there for reducing speed limits and safer walking and cycling infrastructure, and then about a third who say all of them, of course. All right, thanks very much for giving us your feedback on that question. So the second half of this morning's PIN webinar is going to be digging a bit deeper into the topics which were brought up. So we'll have a panel discussion, but before that, we have Rick Neutens. Good morning, Rick. Long-standing supporter of ETSC's road safety work. Very nice to see you here as well this morning. So Rick is Senior Regulatory Affairs Manager for Europe in the Transportation Safety Division at 3M. So Rick is going to tell us about an initiative of 3M Also looking at school zones. So over to you, Rick, for your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Jenny. Always happy to work with you guys. I just wanted to take a few minutes to share a program, a global program that 3M has launched this year about school zone safety. It is, let me see if I can move these slides fast enough. It's about school zone safety. By the end of, or by 2024, we would like to sponsor the upgrade of 100 schools all over the world to make sure that these students and these children can get safe access to school and reduce accidents. As I said, the program started this year. So far, out of these 100 schools, we've done about 32 schools. So as you can see, 5 US, most in Latin America, and then 5 in Asia. And next year, we want to bring this program to Europe as well. Just to as we are not, we can't do this alone. So we have, depending on the region, we have several partners. IRAP is probably a key partner because they have a school zone assessment program, the same as they do for their star ratings for roads. IRAP also has a school safety star rating for schools, as I said. So we've been working with their local organizations like TIRAP, India RAP, and to identify and assess the schools that would benefit from these upgrades mostly. As you know, for people who know 3M and our division, we focus mainly on infrastructure, making infrastructure more visible, and I'll show some examples later. But these programs are more than just about infrastructure. As also mentioned by the speaker from Norway, it's about education, it's about the safe system approach, it's about awareness. There is much more than just infrastructure, but our contribution is mainly on the infrastructure side. I just wanted to share 2 examples so you can see what we are doing. So here is a school from Panama where we worked with FIA, local authorities, and local NGOs. One school in Panama City, and then we looked with them to upgrade the infrastructure. You see some pictures to the right. You also saw a video to the bottom left where we applied some of the products we have so they can be quickly applied to the road, and road traffic can the road can be opened practically immediately. The good thing about these projects is that we've seen is that they trigger more investments by the local municipality because it's not only about the safety on the road in front of the school, it's also about the roads go to school. It's also about traffic in the area. So the good thing is that it triggers more at municipality level, but it also triggers initiatives by some ministries to replicate these projects in other municipalities throughout the country as well. Another case, a second case here in Thailand. Also there we worked with the local authorities, of course. Here the school was relatively in a dangerous area because it was on a straight road with multi-lanes, so speed tends to be high. So there we invested in some areas, in some measures to reduce speed, to make the area stand out more to the car drivers. So also here the local authorities have created budget then to replicate these things at other schools in Thailand as well. Also in Europe, we it hasn't been new for us. Some of our colleagues, like in Slovakia many years ago, we helped schools to invest and make the road infrastructure more visible, and make sure that kids could cross the school safely. And as you can see from the drawings, the contributions we make is more on the signing and on the markings, and of course the whole design, as I said, the safe system approach is very important. Just to and then the night visibility as well. Just to conclude, I wanted to take the thoughts by a Norwegian road safety expert. So probably no coincidence that we mentioned Norway again here today, is about how this Dr. Rune Elvik, how he demonstrated or taught the approach to be taken to make the infrastructure or the area more visible, to make it stand out, let's say, and make sure that the traffic users are complying, and how risks can be reduced. His first factor is, of course, visibility. It sounds obvious, but as you can see from some of the pictures here, visibility is maybe good in the beginning, but after a while, if no maintenance is done, if vegetation grows in front of the infrastructure, of the signs, if graffiti is being used, your visibility may reduce. And today, in the past, we were only thinking about human vision, but today we also need to think about machine vision. We need to make sure that cameras and sensors in the car can see the speed signs, can read, can interpret the road infrastructure as well. And also here, the picture on the bottom from the vegetation, cameras have specifically difficulties reading the conditional signs that are below traffic signs, because it's not an obvious traffic signs for their algorithm to look for. Night visibility, also mentioned in Norway. Many countries, kids have to go to school or come back from school during dark hours. This picture has 4 traffic signs, 4 stop signs. They're all nicely visible during the day, but as you can see, some signs would completely disappear and become invisible during the night. Same this about road markings. Also here, there is a lot of technology to make road markings stand out better and make them more durable. There is even technology today that road markings can even be seen by humans and by the cars during rain. So there are special glass beads today that even during rain, or if the marking would be underwater, that you would still see the marking shine up during the night as well. The second concept that Rune Elvik is recommending is conspicuity. Is really your traffic signs, your infrastructure has to attract the attention of the driver. Because and there you see a lot of use for fluorescent signs. Fluorescent technology or special shapes will attract the attention of the driver. And as you can see from the work zone sign here, on the right you have a fluorescent yellow, on the left you have a standard yellow, and that you can see that how fluorescent is really popping up in the environment and attracting the attention of the driver. Rune says that these 2 aspects will improve the readability, and of course, both for human drivers and for machine vision today. A second aspect that Rune brings in is the intelligibility. It's a very difficult word for non-English speaking. I don't know if the word is really correct English, but at least with this, Rune is saying, make sure that people can immediately understand what the situation is about. So use infrastructure, use signs that the driver or the road user immediately knows that he is in an area, a specific area. So for And there have been a lot of initiatives over time to give a special infrastructure or a special infrastructure concept to school zones. So there are here some are ideas from the past and are still used in Belgium. Octopus was a concept that was also launched many years ago. You can still see it. It has been taken into Holland as well. We've seen it in Slovenia, where also there the government has recommended a national-wide concept that could be used for school zones. Again, special infrastructure that makes sure that people recognize that this is a school zone. And of course, the more you standardize, the more you can repeat the concept throughout the country, then this will immediately trigger the drivers or the road users' attention, and he will understand that he is in a school zone area, and he will adapt his behavior. Because this is what Rune is saying. Of course, behind that, most of the drivers are really motivated to comply with the rules, and that they have the motivation. Of course, for younger children, education is a part for them to understand how, and it's part of their learning. And this will lead to compliance, and this compliance will lead to reduce risk. And of course, we've seen it many times with school zones, that because school zones were not safe, that people were driving their kids to school. And now we, of course, in an urban area where the car, the role of the car is trying to be reduced, and mobility there is more active mobility. And the first approach has been to separate cars from the other road users, and that's why kiss and ride areas have been, in some school zones, have been built. But of course, the objective is really, if we reduce risk, that the need to bring kids to school with cars is reduced, and other modes of transport, which are generally recommended for urban transport now, can be used. So this, taking this concept of Rune Ilvik in mind, I think visibility, conspicuity, intelligibility, so a real good understanding of how a school zone, standard design for a school zone, that will help to motivate the driver and reduce risks ultimately. So this is where I wanted to keep it for today. I wanted to have it as commercial free as possible. So if people want to reach out to me, you can find my email. So thanks for the opportunity, Ellen and Jenny. Back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this fits also into the self-explaining roads. We're also still expecting some guidance from the European Commission on self-explaining roads as part of the Infrastructure Safety Directive. Thanks very much, Rick. So now I would like to introduce our panel. I'd like to ask all the panel members to switch their cameras on. So for our panel discussion, we're going to be looking at both safety of children inside and outside of the vehicle. And yeah, Maria, I think if you could just bring up that slide, if possible, showing again the data presented by Jenny, which is that half of children aged 0 to 13 die as passengers, 1/3 as pedestrians, and 1 in 10 as cyclists. So hence also the way that we've structured this panel debate and thought about who we wanted to invite. So we're going to be covering cycling safety, school streets initiatives, focusing on child safety restraint systems, and promoting active mobility. Yeah, thanks very much. So before we launch into the first, so the structure will be 5-minute presentations, And then we will take questions from the audience. We also have some questions, and there's a chance to discuss a little bit further. Before we go into the presentations, if I could ask each of the panelists to please, present yourselves. And also I want to take you back to when you were a kid and ask you the question of whether or not you ever walked or cycled independently to school, and at what age and which country. So I'll go first. I was 9, and that was in England. Relatively safe walk to school of about 1 kilometer, but only as of the age of 9. So I pass to Michaelis. Welcome very much, Michaelis. You're muted.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, 1 second, please. I'm trying to, right. Can everyone hear me right now?
That's better, yeah.
Great. Okay, so I'm Michaelis Karandanos, a traffic engineer here at the Ministry of Transport, Communications and Works in Cyprus. Been here for the last 2 years. Before that, I was working as a consultant and as an officer in the UK, in London. In my previous job, I had the opportunity to work on the healthy school streets that the Mayor of London had introduced. So that was very interesting, and trying now to partly apply this in totally different conditions here in Cyprus. In terms of your question, Ellen, yes, when I was between 12 and 14 and 18, sorry, 12 and 16, I used to walk to school. It was a 1 kilometer, maybe less distance. Not so safe in terms of footways infrastructure, but I did manage to do it. And then later, when my family moved to the suburbs, then I didn't have an option to walk to school, so I had to be driven by my parents, which is basically a typical situation here in Cyprus.
Great, thank you very much. So next up, please, Alice Mitu, if you could briefly introduce yourself and also let us know about.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alice Mitu. I'm a medical doctor, former United States Peace Corps medical officer. And for 3 years, I started a project, Children Car Safety Romania, and trying to change the parents and public perspective in Romania towards the safety of the young road users as passengers, pedestrians, users of tricycles or bicycles. As for myself, I first started to walk independently to school when I was age 12. The fact was that at that time, at least, the roads were much safer in Romania because the number of cars were less. So my challenges as a child were less than they are now for the children of 2022.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Super. Thanks very much, Alice. Nice to have you with us. Next, Jens, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Jens Müller from the Clean Cities campaign. We're a European federation working on clean mobility in cities. I'll say a few words about this later. I grew up in Germany, and I think I started cycling to school when I was about 8 years old. And it was a relatively safe one because there wasn't a lot of traffic back then. But I also sometimes got on the bus, and I remember the bus driver was particularly angry at times. So I think the bike was the nicer option compared to taking the bus. And so, yeah, I've got good memories of this. And I'm a father of 2 young kids. So every day I'm facing the challenges we're discussing here today. And I think it definitely also shapes your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thanks very much, Jens. Last up is Wilma, please.
Yes, hello. My name is Wilma Slinger. I work at a knowledge platform for traffic and transport in Holland. I'm there a project leader for road safety and busy with road safety education and also the risk approach, which I'm going to talk about later. I lived in my child years opposite my primary school, so there was one street in between, and my mother managed to bring me to school up till 9 years old, I think, because I think she would like to chat with all the other parents who were standing there, and not because it was unsafe. So I think I was 9 or something when I first did my first travel alone.
Super, thank you. No, there is that aspect as well. Okay, so let's start with these very short impulse presentations of 5 minutes each. And as I mentioned, I'll be quite strict with the timing so that we can have some time at the end. Michael, if I could ask you to go first. So Cyprus, very interesting case, also in our PIN report, has relatively low child mortality, but this could be attributed to the fact that few children walk or cycle to school and are instead driven by their parents, which is exactly, of course, one of the things that we want to try to change. And yeah, over to you, Michaelis. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, absolutely. Echoing what you said in your introduction to what I said earlier. I don't know if everyone can see my slides that I'm presenting.
Yeah, perfect.
Great. So I just had 3 or 4 slides, very brief. I'm not going to tire you too much because basically just wanted to give you the perspective of Cyprus. We've obviously read the latest report that you're presenting here today, and the very interesting statistic in figure 3 that Cyprus has the second lowest number of child deaths per million of child population. When we compare that to the other statistic that was earlier shown and that we already knew that we're not doing very well in terms of deaths in the general populations. We're above the EU average of 45. I think we're around 50 deaths per year. That kind of it's a little bit contradictory. So I wanted to kind of explore a little bit the reasons behind this. So if I go to my next slide. Like I said earlier, it's down to mainly down to the culture. So most of the children are being driven by their parents and guardians to school rather than walking and cycling. This is well, it's twofold. Basically, it's because we have a very high car usage in Cyprus of the order of 92% in the urban areas. But also because of it's a social aspect, I guess, the overprotection of parents towards their children, which I'm sure it's shared in other countries. I think our colleague from Norway discussed something like this in her presentation. But this is especially the case in Cyprus for primary school pupils under 12 years old, so they're being very overprotective, parents or grandparents. So they don't let the children walk alone independently or cycle alone to school. I've given my own personal perspective, which was some years ago, some decade ago, well, more than that. And also lately, basically, I'm going to touch a little bit on some things that we're doing here in Cyprus, some actions that we're taking. That touches on the infrastructure and mainly infrastructure and education and enforcement. Recently, we have introduced school bus routes for public school students between 12 and 18. So that's basically high school, middle and high school. And that's something we've introduced as a ministry between the areas of residence and the school. So that's kind of almost like a door-to-door service. In terms of the infrastructure, some actions we're taking is pretty much standard like everywhere, almost all the countries in the EU that we've seen. We're introducing traffic calming, which is raised pedestrian crossings and road humps, 30 km/h speeds where we introduce this traffic calming. We've recently introduced the 30 and 20 km/h zones, which is basically in all town centers and conservation areas or areas with reduced road widths. And we're trying to enforce this in school areas as well. And this is obviously combined with other street furniture and surface treatment. We are a bit careful when it comes to designing the pickup and drop-off areas in existing schools and new schools that are being built. We're trying to locate school bus stops and bus space, close to the entrance of the school, have a generous footways and system around the schools and guard railing where appropriate, not everywhere. And something that we're also doing, or the local authorities are doing, is being very careful in terms of the maintenance on the signage, especially on roads surrounding schools, especially when it comes to horizontal signage, so road markings, because of the heat. Sorry about that. Because of the heat in Cyprus, we do have some tear and wear in our signage. So we're trying to, the authorities are trying to do frequent, I would say at least once per year, maintenance in August before the school starts. In terms of enforcement,
you have one minute left. Sorry, Michaelis. So choose your most important point.
Sure. Okay. In terms of enforcement, we are trying to have a lollipop man or lady in every school. Then road safety education is very important for us. We have police going to schools, visiting, giving educational and training to schools of every age. We have the traffic education park in Nicosia, which children of every age from 6 to 18 can visit with a specialized training to them. Okay, I was going to say a little bit about governance. So we have a special national committee of experts that look and give advice to local authorities when it comes to design of new schools or addressing issues to existing schools. And one of these issues now is trying to expand the footways and cycle tracks and cycle lanes around school. And we're trying to, in the future, we're trying to focus a little bit more on education around road safety to students and children, because in our view, it's if we try to focus a culture of traffic safety among the children, and that spreads on to the older generations who do not necessarily share the same kind of safety values that the younger generation share. So we're trying to promote that as well as we can, in addition to the infrastructure and enforcement measures. That's it. Thank you very much.
Super, thank you very much. And we'll be able to come back to some of the points, the very good, interesting initiatives that you've got there during the discussion. So well done. Next, please, Wilma, if you could explain to us specifically what you've been doing in the Netherlands on cycling safety. Also, within the 5 minutes, please. Yes. Thank you very much.
I'll try. You can see it?
Yeah, all good.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then my next slide isn't coming. Just one moment. It doesn't. Just one moment. I just try it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, we have it here.
Yeah, well, do that because it doesn't work. I don't know why, but
okay. So could Jenny or Maria, could you put those up? And Wilma, if you could, please start.
I'm sorry.
Your presentation.
We tested it, but it always happens.
Things happen.
Okay, next slide.
Thank you.
I'm from the organization CROW, it's called in Dutch, in English it's called CROW. And one of the things we are known of is our guidelines, and I just put one which we have available in English, the design manual for bicycle traffic. I think in this context it is really useful for other people. So you can, after the slides have been distributed, you can download it. Next slide. We are on the, with 5 cities in the top 10 of best cycling cities of the world. So that's, good for us and good for Europe that we have a lot of knowledge about good cycling. Next slide. And our cycling infrastructure you see here. So it's quite dense. Then we have almost 37,000 kilometers of cycle paths and more bikes than people in our country. Next slide. And our policy, which is, well, I think 2019, we published it, a new strategic road safety plan, and it's about a risk approach, so looking at risks instead of well, people getting killed or injured. And we have a national vision on cycling, which has an emphasis on infrastructure and storage space and stimulating cycling. Next slide. And about children in our country, well, here you see some figures of 2019, where 17,000 children were in hospital, injured, and well, most of them were cycling. So that's a main issue here. Next slide. And about what are we doing in Holland to get children more safe? Well, one part is education, road safety education. We have a lot of teaching methods for mostly primary school. We have a bicycle exam, which well, differs per region, but most schools are doing that for 11, 12 years old. A lot of campaigns when schools are starting at September every year, and other issues. And also we have a road safety label for schools in most provinces, and that's a label schools can earn and getting points for having, for example, practical lessons, and for having a parent who is busy with road safety in the schools, or good infrastructure, etc. And it stimulates schools, well, to be yeah, to give attention to road safety, and also in the surroundings of the school. And we're stimulating helmet use. It's not mandatory, but well, children mostly use helmets, but it can be better. Next slide. And what we see also is that more and more children don't have a bike, and for that reason can't cycle. And that's an issue in big cities where well, populations of migrants not used to cycle, but also in the higher income region where children are brought to school by car, and their ability to cycle is less than with other children. And there are some programs to stimulate that, and also to collect bicycles for those children. Next slide. And finally, infrastructure. We do a lot of things to improve infrastructure for all target groups, and we have the issue design for all. So if it's good for children, it's good for everybody. We are busy with widening of our cycle paths because of all these light electronic vehicle things and electric bikes, and we're removing and protecting obstacles, and improving angles on cycle path crossings, because electric bicycles have difficulties with that. Also, big emphasis on school zones. Well, we saw Octopus just right now. We have other programs to run and to make school zones visible. And there's a big challenge to make our roads more used to 30 kilometers an hour. Amsterdam has promised to have 80% of his road network 30 kilometers by next year, the end of next year. So that we're busy with too. Next slide. That was it.
Super, thanks very much, Wilma, and perfectly in time. Yeah, hopefully we can also discuss a little bit more about 30K or even 20. And we were also very pleased to hear this news from Amsterdam. Next, if I could have Jens, and then last but not leastly, Alice. So Jens from the Clean Cities campaign and the initiative on Streets for Kids. Your 5 minutes or less start now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. So as I mentioned before, I'm from the Clean Cities campaign. I'm going to speak about school streets, so something that has been brought up several times already this morning. Let's maybe just start by putting things in perspective. It's been mentioned several times. If you look at things moving over generations, then you can see that over time, people, and especially children, are less mobile than they used to be and less autonomous. So if you look here at the top left, for example, today, children barely walk to the end of their street. The parents maybe walked or cycled a bit further, the grandfather was allowed to basically go much further, and then the great-grandfather here, with an example from Sheffield, was really able to go to the other part of the city really and go to fish there. So it's really something that has been in part been deteriorating over time, and road safety plays a major role in this. But of course, it's not, you know, God-given. We can definitely change something about this, and school streets, in our view, are really important part of that. So quickly, just to explain who we are, so you know who you're dealing with. We're the Clean Cities Campaign. We're a European coalition of more than 75 grassroots and civil society organizations, from very small ones to bigger European organizations. And our main vision is to really go to zero emission transport in cities by 2030 for climate, health, and other reasons, quality of life, of course. And road safety is essential in that. And we use inter alia school streets to get there. And zero emission for us means, of course, also walking and cycling as one of the best options. So the main things we're asking for is really first to work on public space, more walking, cycling, and greenery. So that's where the kids definitely come in. And then, of course, we also need better shared and public transport, and we need to get polluting cars and vehicles out of cities. But clearly for kids, the most important thing in the short term is really working on the space part. So we think that really a good city is one that is designed with kids in mind. You know, if you start doing this, then it's not only good for kids, but it's good for everybody in the end, because it means more safety. It means better accessibility. So it starts, of course, with people that have disabilities, but also if you just think about yourself, maybe when traveling with a heavy suitcase, then sometimes it's just nice to have infrastructure that is accessible, and that goes for everybody. Basically, we can only benefit from that. And of course, we want opportunities for play, walking, cycling, meeting people. So it was mentioned also before, I think, by Wilma, saying that her mother was just walking to school to also speak to people. So it's nice if you're not sitting in your car and rushing off again, but have an opportunity to speak. And it means less noise and pollution, and probably also a lot of other benefits that we don't even think of today. So really starting with the kids is important. And that's also where then our campaign comes in. So you can see the little logo here, Streets for Kids. We focus on the school run because it's, on the one hand, a really important part of mobility. It shapes how people move in cities and also outside cities, because it's often the first part of a mobility chain in the morning, and then part of the mobility also in the afternoon or evening. And also when you ask parents, maybe some of you can also confirm this, it's often the most stressful part of the day. Like we did a survey in the UK where people said actually their work was much less stressful than the school run in the morning. So that's definitely something we have to work on. And for me, at least, safety is a really important part of the stress that is in there. So what are school streets? Probably many of you know what they are, but maybe let's just make that very clear. School streets are really road closures outside schools, can be temporary, only at certain times of the day. They can also be permanent, like some cities are really closing the roads all the time. And they're really easy to implement because you don't need a lot of new infrastructure to start, at least. And they really help shape the perception of the city and get people to think about their mobility more broadly. So it's a good opening also for wider changes. And we have been now running for over a year a campaign called Streets for Kids, which is part of our overall campaigning as Clean Cities, where we want to multiply the number of school streets and also improve the school streets that are put in place. And so we've been working with different organizations, cities, schools, teachers, parents, and so on. And twice a year, we do a big day of action to rally everybody on the same date to really go out in the street and claim back the space. So the school streets, similar to what I said about designing cities with kids in mind, have several benefits. I think we don't need to go through all of them again, keeping track of time, but you can see it's good for health, it's good for public space, it's good for reducing emissions, it's good for independence. And the safety benefits that we're focusing on today, you can really see that for what we know for now, the majority of both the pupils and the parents and the teachers see the benefits clearly, but we also need more research on this. And so it's nothing new what we're doing in Amsterdam. So Wilma, maybe you remember these movements in the Netherlands as well. 1972, people were blocking the roads to really claim back space. And what we're doing today now here in Rome, last year is very similar, to basically also get the kids involved and have parents and kids and teachers think about what they would like to do. And to conclude on that part, keeping track of time, Ellen, this is what it looked like very recently, 21st of October. You can see activities from all across Europe, really. We had more than 140 events this time, like people getting out in the street on the same day. Sometimes it's really fun, serving coffee to parents. Sometimes it's blocking a street and just claiming back the space. And we think this is a powerful tool to transform the cities, the streets, and really make it safer for everybody and generate the other benefits. And that's what I have to say for now. Thank you very much.
Super, thanks very much. Yeah, and we'll definitely come back to the topic of school streets, so where they start, where they finish, during the discussion. Thanks, Jens. So on to our final presenter in this round. Alice, thanks for being patient. So Alice Mitu is from one of our ETSC members from Romania, and her presentation will, explain one of the other strong concerns that came up in our PIN report. So looking at the safety and child safety restraints for when children are in cars. So Alice, your 5 minutes start now. Thank you.
Okay, so shall I share my screen, or the presentation will be from you? Just a second.
Yeah, if you can try. Otherwise, if it doesn't work, we do it. Sorry.
Okay. So it's not working. So
okay. So it's coming from us. But you can already
start talking anyway. Romania, as you saw on the slides presented earlier, it's the country that has the highest death toll among road users, and unfortunately among young road users, as passengers, as pedestrians, as users of different means of transportation. So our project that started in 2019, it's tackling especially the category of children passengers that are a part of the highest number of victims in Romania. We have based our action plan for Romania using the data from the police, from the medical sources, as well from the insurance companies. So we try to find out the reasons behind this high victimization rate. Next slide. And we set 3 pillars for our program. First, it's an educational program that is targeting future parents and parents. Second pillar, it's dedicated to children from kindergartens and school, because as it was mentioned before, children can educate the adults in respect of respecting certain rules. And then the third pillar, it's a more consistent PR awareness set of campaigns targeting all population of Romania regarding the usage of restraints in the cars, child restraints and seat belts. For the first, next slide. First, the first pillar of our program, we started a project that it's called the National Children Car Safety Caravan, with 2 components. One, it's going into kindergartens and school, where with the help with the Romanian Road Traffic Police and using a very innovative set of stories developed for children with funny characters, talking about how to travel to kindergarten, how to use the child restraint and so on. We are trying to educate the children and their parents through the children about the usage of these child restraint systems. Also with the caravan, next slide, we are gathering the parents, the adults, and teaching them how to use to choose and to use correctly child restraint systems, how to fit them. And also we are trying to educate the adults regarding the risky driving behavior, driving under influence, driving when you are very tired, or by the means of modern technology, using virtual reality scenarios in order to better educate them as drivers. Also, these caravans are done in cooperation with the Romanian Road Traffic Police, with the first responders, doctors, psychologists, and this year, for example, we had 22 stops in Romania. Next slide. we have two special projects because we observe that there are two categories that need information the most. Future parents, and for them we set, along with the petrol stations, a campaign for helping the future parents to get for free, to borrow for 3 days infant carrier in order to safely discharge their babies from the maternity. And upon the return of the infant carrier, they receive information on how to further use the child restraint systems, and also a voucher to purchase child restraint system of their own. Over 2,000 beneficiaries are till now from this project. Second project, also developed with the petrol oil stations. Next slide. It's tackling the parents of older children, because we observed that after age of 4, parents stop using child restraint system. For some reason, they consider they are not important. So we encourage them to recycle the used and old car seats, and in that way we stimulate them to purchase a car seat for the next category. They receive a voucher, and also in this way we secure the fact that these old and used car seats are not ending up in the dumpster. They will end up with a second life, so they are transformed in furniture, or they are transformed in object of design that we will donate. We will have a charity gala, and the money that will be raised from this charity gala, where people can donate for these objects, will go to the trauma centers where the children that are injured in the car crashes in Romania are treated. These are part of the projects that we developed in these 3 years, and we are proud to see that, at least in terms of the future parents, the number of people who are getting information and starting to use infant carriers from the very beginning, it's growing. And also the number of people from our database that are using correctly car seats increased from 34.5% in 2019 to 43%, which is a pretty nice improvement in terms of correct usage of child restraint systems.
Okay, Alice, sorry, you're nearly at the end. You've reached your 5 minutes.
Yes. So yes. I ended the presentation.
Super. No, with the result, with some very, very encouraging results after the very hard work that you're doing. So thank you. Thank you very much for this short presentation, and sorry to pressure you all on time. But you have slightly more time to answer the questions, because unfortunately our colleague from Norway, Rita, has had to go to another meeting. So for those of you in the audience, please send in your questions. We've got a few already, but first question I want to ask to everybody, starting with Wilma. So very short response, please. In your opinion, what is the biggest threat to child road safety today? You're muted.
Sorry, speed.
Speed. Okay, thank you. Jens.
Yeah, I think it would be speed and the lack of space for children.
Michaelis?
Sorry, could you please repeat the question, because I was not able to hear it.
No problem. In your opinion, what's the biggest threat to child road safety today?
I would say, from the Cypriot perspective here, is the driver behavior.
Driver behavior. Okay.
Yeah.
Jenny?
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree on the speed, but also the infrastructure and protecting our vulnerable road users in general, which include children obviously as well, but that sort of like the separated infrastructure for those most vulnerable as well.
Okay, thank you. And Alice?
in particular case of Romania, apart from speed and poor infrastructure, it's a lack of reinforcement of enough reinforcement of law, and also risky behavior of the drivers. So four causes.
Okay, thank you very much for those quick fire responses to that first big question. So now I'm going to take one of the questions from the audience, from Rod King. Thank you, Rod, for your question. Right, so I'd like you all to listen very carefully. I would suggest that at any time there are more children at risk walking or cycling outside a school zone than inside a school zone. Surely the real risk is not where the driver sees many children, i.e. around schools, but on the rest of the route to and fro from home, where many more children are dispersed, but still at risk. So the question is, I guess, and now that's me, given that, are we right to be focusing just on the areas around schools? And I start with you, Jens, because this is one of your special areas of focus, but I'll come to the others as well. Thanks, Rod, for the question.
Thank you. Excellent question. And we do get this a lot, of course. Is it enough to just close one street or one area and then basically parents just drop their kids a bit further? Maybe it's even worse. I think the answer to this is that we're not stopping with just closing one street. You know, it's an opening because often it's easier to discuss that and start with that. But eventually we want to get people out of their cars and not have the parents drive to school at all. And we've seen some cases, like, for example, in Spain, some of our most active volunteers on the ground are people who used to think I can only drive by car. They were really upset by the idea of not being able to drive their kids to school. And now they saw the benefits and they're actually the most vocal people supporting us. So I think we need to see it maybe as a longer term thing. So it's not only one street or one area. Secondly, also, you shouldn't, of course, just push the traffic somewhere else, but really look at, okay, what else can be improved also in the areas around. And really communicate that it's about, you know, not just dropping the kids somewhere else, but changing your mobility overall so that your kids can benefit from the active mobility part. But maybe at the beginning, there will be challenges around this. I think that's also clear. And that's why I think it's really important to work not just with the schools, but also with the cities. So many cities have plans for improving the whole way to school, back and forth. And it's really important that we look beyond just individual streets. I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you very much. We also included some examples of cities that are taking a larger approach also in our report. Paris, for example. Wilma, how about your response on this? This must also come up quite a lot in your discussions.
Yes, no, I agree with Jens. It's about the whole route and also about adjusting speed to a level that, well, accidents aren't fatal, and also good infrastructure for everybody. So in Holland we are, well, glad with the cycling infrastructure, which is not well, for every country at this moment the same level, but it brought us a lot of safety, I think, and you have to well, as a car driver, you have to be used to think about other road users, what they think and what they are going to do and behave in traffic. And education and campaigns and all that kind of things is also necessary, if keeps necessary.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Michaelis from Cyprus, what's your response?
Yep. So I would say, obviously, we have to focus at the city or urban level at promoting sustainable transport. That's something we've been doing we started recently doing in our urban centers in Cyprus. However, I do believe that when it comes to children's safety, a focus has to be placed in the immediate area of the school, because that's where naturally have more congregation of people and cars and pedestrians and cyclists. But at the same time, maybe it's an idea and it's something that we should focus on more on the route to school, not just the immediate area around the school, but the route to school, more specific. So not just the city or the school, but the route to school, if that makes so more like an intermediate level of focus. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I could only agree. Jenny?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Michaelis there, because that routes to school idea is also something that we cover in our report. I'm thinking off the top of my head, but I think in Austria they work on routes to school, so not just the area outside the school. But you know, working on one specific area like that can have a trickle-down effect. It can raise awareness of the fact of children and being aware of children and behaving differently where there are a lot of children. I think that's an important message as well. I think that Jens hinted at as well. And then also just this idea of a point that we make, that Norway also made, is that countries that have a generally good road safe roads for everybody also tend to have safe roads for children. So it's about, yes, it's more than just the area around a certain school, but it can you know, send a bigger message to then trickle down into the sort of wider road safety issues, I suppose.
Great, thank you very much. So specific question to Jens. When is the next day of action around school streets? And yeah, could you also share the study? And of course we can share it to the participants, where you say that parents find the route to school the most stressful part of the day. I definitely agree with that myself. But yeah, so quick question to you on those 2 points, please.
Yeah, well, I'll put the link to the study in the chat so you can have a look at it. It's published on our website. Also, we have a fact sheet about school streets with the main results from studies. So I will put both here, and probably we can also share them after the event. And then, so what was the first question again?
When's the next day of action, European action, school streets?
Yeah, very good question as well. So this is going to be in May. It will be confirmed soon. It's probably the 7th of May, because we're working together with a number of organizations, but it will be on our website soon. So you can pencil the 7th of May into your agenda.
Great, lovely. Thank you very much. So this is a question which came up during the last presentation from Norway. And even if Rita has left, I think it's still highly relevant for other people in the panel. So the question was asked, do you face resistance from municipalities or parents? So this was in relation to Norway in the heart zone, but we can also apply this to the school street and school zone project ideas. Perhaps if I could start with Michaelis, you're trying to change mobility patterns in Cyprus. Yeah, what do you do when you face resistance, either from towns who say no, it will never work, or parents who are saying there's no way I'm going to put my kid on a bike, and then for you to know that it's coming, Jens, Wilma, and Jenny as well, and Alice, I'll come to you afterwards. So Michaelis, please first.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Well, this is an issue that we've observed in Cyprus more generally when it comes to urban mobility. I don't have any specific answers when it comes to schools, to be honest. But I think if it applies in the general sense of the urban area, I think it applies to the schools, to the school-related trips as well. So people, they are very reluctant in changing modes of transport, or so switching from car to cycling or taking the bus. And we have recently introduced some schemes that are more friendly towards buses and cycling in the center of our capital, Nicosia, for example. And that there's been so basically we converted the main avenue to a bus only corridor, which was a commercial avenue, and people were very resistant to it. There's a lot of bad reaction mainly through the press, etc. But what we've tried introducing, although we did it in the past too, is this participatory design. So in our future plan, it is to introduce school streets, as obviously, and we will include parents and schools into the decision process. through there's some national committees that are responsible. So we will try to get involved, the Ministry of Education and parents associations, and in an effort to try to explain to them how and the reasons behind this and the benefits of this in terms of air quality and road safety and all that. So yeah, I don't have any solid experience to share with you, but yeah, here you go.
No, but that sounds like a very good plan. Wilma.
Yeah. Well, we are lucky that cycling and walking is well, children are usually cycle or walk to school. So if it's not, or we want to I'll get the few people who doesn't doing it, there are a lot of programs to stimulate that, and mostly we do that by getting the children enthusiastic about it, and they educate the parents by I want to cycle to school because it's such fun, and get their parents doing it. So that's more on a small scale, and on the scale of the municipality as a whole, we stimulate the STOMP principle. It's about designing your roads and everything with the cyclist and pedestrian in mind first, and then the other modes of transport. And that's quite hot at this moment in Holland too. A lot of municipalities are adopting that, and the resistance is not that big, I believe, at this moment for that principle. So people, just because of COVID, I think that helped too. People are, have experienced how nice it is to walk and cycle and have a green environment and less busy. So I think that helps.
Super, thank you very much. Good to hear some positive stories. We're having a very tough discussion here in Brussels at the moment. Jens.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, it's a hot discussion everywhere. And I think in the end, it comes down to making a choice. It's about the value. Do we think that safety is important? Do we want to protect lives? I think COVID has taught us a lot about this. We went at great length to really protect people. Why can't we do the same when it comes to road safety? Like, why did we get so used to this? And so it's really, in the end, you will have to upset some people. I think there's no way around this if you think it's important enough, and we clearly do. Then we looked, for example, at London boroughs. There were some that consulted people for 2 years before introducing low traffic neighborhoods. There were a few that really went ahead much more quickly. In the end, the resistance was similar. So you should, of course, involve people, but it's no guarantee at all that people will just then all be happy with that. There will always be some people who are upset. And we think you need champions, local champions, people from the ground, parents, families, teachers, shop owners, other people who say, we stand up for this, we want to do it. It shouldn't be the mayor deciding to do it. It should be people asking for it. But of course, the mayor in the end, or the mayors, have to have the courage to do it. And yes, it will upset some people, but compared to having kids being killed on the road, I think that's a price we're willing to pay.
Well, exactly. Thank you very much for that response. We'll come back to one of the issues that raised in a moment. But first, Alice, thinking of the children killed within the cars, so we see from our report that's 49% EU-wide. One of the issues that came out strongly in the PIN report, that there's still a problem with ill fitment, so incorrect fitment, and having personally struggled with fitting a child safety restraint to a car, I know it's really hard. So yeah, what's the best way to address this challenge of fitting a child safety restraint correctly? You think you're doing the best for your child, but then it's not correctly fitted and it could kill the child if there is a collision.
So parents should be encouraged and should find out that first thing when they purchase a car seat is to open the box and find the manual of usage of that car seat, because most of them don't even know that this type of items are used according to some instructions, and that do it just putting in the car and thinking that it will do the trick, the magic, and will protect the child, even if they do not secure the belts of the car seat, or even if they do not secure the child seat in the car. So first thing, it's to teach the parents that each technical product should be used according to technical instructions. Second, it's instructing the salesmen who are offering this type of child restraint system to be prepared with instructions and teaching parents to use the car seat also. So even from the moment when the parents are getting out of the shop, they should have a basic knowledge at least about that car seat that they purchased. And if possible, it will be wonderful if they can have the car seat already fitted by that salesman consultant in sales in the car. So this will be another thing that can be changed in the parents' behavior towards child restraint systems. Also, video tutorials for parents for each type of car seat will be useful. These are some of the ideas that we are trying to introduce and to in our webinars and trainings for parents in Romania.
Super, thank you very much. No, some very, very good tips and advice there. So we've got time for one last question. I wanted to go back to speed because that also came up very highly in terms of measures that can make a difference here. It's also been mentioned by quite a few of the panelists in your interventions. So questions then to all of you. How important are speed limits in improving child road safety? Is 30 kilometers an hour low enough? So Spain is going for 20 kilometers an hour in some areas. We had also from Michaelis in Cyprus, that's also the intention there. And then, yeah, what measures are needed to enforce 30 or even 20? If I could start with Wilma, please. So you also had it in your presentation.
Yeah. In our country, we have also 15 kilometers an hour for streets where there's no sidewalk, for instance. The concept of woonerf, it's used in abroad also. And that's also more a topic right now. We, as an organization, doing research at this moment about this concept, about how it's used and how we can broaden it, or even the discussion that it's not the minimum of 30, but you can choose for a lower speed. So that's an issue in our country at this moment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, speed is crucial. I mentioned it in my slides. It's like one of the biggest asks we have is to have 30 kilometer zones and for that to be enforced. Obviously, the lower the better. We know that the data shows that you are more likely to survive a collision at 30 than at 50. So the data really supports the introduction of this speed limit. And in terms of enforcement, it's not just about policemen, enforcing drivers. There's also ways to do it with the infrastructure so that your road, it's very much what the Safe System says, is that your road doesn't actually allow you to go faster than that speed. So you can work with the road as well and the infrastructure to enforce speed as well, so that it's obvious that we need to go slower in this particular area. So I would say, yes, speed limits are important. Yes, they must be enforced, and it doesn't just have to be police. There are other ways of doing it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much. Jens?
Yeah, I think I can very much echo what's been said. So on the one hand, it's just physics. If you drive faster, then the force will be bigger, but also the likelihood of hitting somebody, because the reaction time will not be appropriate. You cannot brake in time. So it's really important. 30 kilometers probably in many places are still too fast. I think we often feel that, and definitely, as humans, we're not necessarily designed to move at these speeds and really within a busy environment react properly. So in some places it might be just 5 or 10 kilometers basically to stay really safe. or no cars at all. And for the enforcement, I think that's a big frustration also, that I think it's not considered a priority in most places still. You know, there's a lot of tolerance around, you know, driving a bit faster where you will still not be stopped necessarily. There's not a lot of controls in many places. We don't use technologies like the speed assistance, which we think needs to be mandatory, and also camera enforcement. So it's not rocket science. We could redo it. We do it in other areas more consistently, but why don't we do it for speed? So I think it's really a lot about the political will, and yes, upsetting the people who are speeding, which again, we think is definitely what has to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks also for mentioning the intelligent speed assistance. Yeah, the new technology that should also help. Lastly, to Michaelis with your 20 kilometers an hour initiative also.
Right. Yeah. So we've had a couple of challenges with these schemes, basically because of lack of resources from the enforcement side, from the police. So as it was previously mentioned, obviously you cannot expect enforcement to be everywhere and at all times. That combined with what I said earlier about driver behavior, unfortunately our drivers do tend to drive more aggressively and not respect speed limits so much. So our last resort was to basically focus on harder measures such as speed bumps and raised crossings and somewhat more of a way to reduce the speeds, to force the drivers to reduce their speeds rather than just rely on enforcement or their own education, let's say. But we do recognize that more has to be done in terms of educating drivers why it's important to reduce speeds in this particular areas, and why they should be abiding by the traffic code. So that's what we'll probably be more focusing on, in addition to all the other measures I mentioned.
That sounds like an excellent response. Yeah, we need absolutely all of those different areas to work together and support one another. Infrastructure, traffic law enforcement, information and campaigns to explain why a reduction in speed is necessary, also for everybody, but also for children. I know it's been a very dense webinar. I apologize for squashing lots of different issues in. We didn't manage to cover everything, but we've now come to the end. And I want to thank again all of the speakers. So big virtual round of applause to you, the panelists as well, for taking some of those quite tough questions too. Hopefully those of you who've been listening in, ask questions, will go away with some new ideas, ideas for action and what you can do to improve child safety. From our side, ETSC is working on its next report, looking at powered two-wheelers. They also came up, of course, in this specific child report. So the powered two-wheeler pin flash is due to be published in spring. And yeah, the recording of this seminar will be going online, all the presentations as well. So it just leaves me to say to you, thank you again, and have a lovely Christmas and Happy New Year when you get to it. All the very best. Bye-bye.